Establishing a constructive climate. Today, we're looking at climate in the context of a team or organization and taking a deeper dive into the 4 factors that a leader should consider when establishing a constructive climate. Think about teams you've worked well or not so well with in the past and how you can establish a constructive climate in your team now or later. Here are the study guide questions for this chapter. In addition to identifying the 4 factors to consider for a constructive climate, you will also need to be able to discuss why that factor is important in a climate and how a leader can build or communicate that factor. You will also want to know what a constructive climate looks like and how it relates to culture. We'll also be looking closely at groupthink, and some of what we discuss here is only in lecture, not in the textbook. So, climate is people's shared perceptions, including people's general thoughts and feelings about the activities, assumptions, and procedures of a group. These things may fluctuate. A constructive climate is just that, an atmosphere that promotes group members' satisfaction and achieving their personal best. But beyond having satisfied and well-performing members, there's another reason for leaders to build a constructive climate in their workplace. Sean Murphy stated in his 2015 book, The Optimistic Workplace, that people in positive work environments outperform those who work in negative work climates by 10 to 30%. A leader at every level in an organization can impact climate. Culture is deeper in the organization and takes longer to change. Climate is a byproduct of culture, but it is more flexible. An organization's culture develops over longer periods from the many interactions within the group or organization. A culture is reinforced by organizational members who've developed patterns of working together over time. The 4 factors for establishing a constructive climate are providing structure, clarifying norms, building cohesiveness, and promoting standards of excellence. Providing structure is much like giving group members an architectural blueprint. Instilling structure provides people with a sense of security, direction, and stability. A leader can provide that structure by communicating the goals of the group. This harkens back to vision and mission statements from Chapter 7, right? People want to know why they are doing something and how they are accomplishing it. Another key thing a leader can do is work for synergy. By identifying the unique ways that each individual member can contribute to the group, synergy is achieved. That's when the group outcome is greater than the sum of the individual contributions. So a leader can identify strengths like we talked about in Chapter 6 and assign roles to help achieve this. Giving people clear roles helps clarify everyone's place in the organization and how they contribute to goals. Norms are the rules of behavior that are established and shared by group members. Norms are important because they are artifacts that point to what the organization values. Norms show what are appropriate and inappropriate behaviors. Norms do not emerge on their own, but as an outcome of people interacting with each other and the leader. They're an outcome of how leaders treat followers and followers treat each other. It can be tricky as a newcomer to learn norms because they're usually assumed or understood and usually not verbally articulated by people. Often you only learn of a norm when you violate it. For example, you're in a new job. The work fridge has soda. Can you take one? How do you know? I've been talking about norms as behaviors, but as researchers have noted, organizations have important norms company-wide and at the group level. There are norms about who says what, to whom, when, through what channel, for what duration, by what decision procedure. For example, would you call up a new boss out of the blue on her home number just to chat for an hour? That might violate several norms: the direction of communication, who initiates it, the channel, the duration. There are 3 types of norms: pivotal, relevant, and peripheral. Pivotal norms are behaviors that must be followed to stay in the organization. These types of norms may also be explicitly stated in a policy or handbook. For instance, don't come to work intoxicated, or don't routinely miss work, definitely show up on time, etc. Relevant norms, on the other hand, are less likely to be written down, and violating them doesn't likely mean you'll be fired or expelled from the organization. However, not following these norms will limit your success in the company. For instance, submitting work at the very last minute won't get you fired, but consistently submitting work early could increase opportunities for raises or promotions. Peripheral norms are behavior patterns that are rarely written and least important to learn because they have minor consequences if you violate them. For example, sitting in someone's spot at the meeting table. It may cause confusion or joking comments, but results in minimal pushback. Leader influence norms. As a leader, you can influence norms in your group, organization, community, or workplace. To do so, there are a few things to keep in mind. You need to understand how they develop. Norms develop over time. They stem from expectations of how to behave based on previous experience. Actions are likely to become norms if they develop early in a group's history, or if a high-status individual performs them, i.e., following the leader. These behaviors become norms when they are repeated and or reinforced as positive or not explicitly rejected. A leader has an opportunity to influence norms intentionally, especially at the beginning of a project, by doing the other three behaviors we'll see listed here: explicit discussion, reinforcement and sanctioning, and modeling behaviors. We can shape a norm through explicit discussion of it. So, a leader can draw attention to a norm that's violated by discussing it, so they can shape how a group understands a behavior. Sometimes it is about specifying a norm to make the expected behavior more clear. A 2003 study found that when a norm of communicate regularly wasn't being performed by group members, identifying that and specifying the norm with check email daily shaped the normative behavior for the group. Especially if they're pivotal or relevant, a leader should clarify norms to the team and make them constructive. If you have a team where it seems like people are not communicating with each other or things are getting missed, you might want to start stressing the importance of team debriefings. By doing that, you're verbally indicating that people should value knowing what's going on with other people's roles. You would further model that in your interactions by asking people how things are going, holding monthly meetings where everyone gets a status update, etc. Leaders can discuss specifying those behaviors or figuring out how to clarify the norm with followers by involving them in the process of changing norms that are hindering the group. That's why when we were forming norms for our class, we try to have a discussion about the ones that are vague and coming up with more concrete rules. It's hard to police a vague behavior, and it's frustrating too. What else can you do? You can positively reinforce those who follow norms and sanction those who don't, if their self-correction doesn't happen. This increases the pressure to conform. Positive reinforcement is specifically praising behaviors who want to become norms, like thanking people for arriving prepared and early. Sanctions might not be explicit, like, hey, don't do that. Groups usually wait for people to self-correct first after violating a norm. A lot of norm enforcement comes from people self-monitoring, that is, reading the room, noticing that their behavior is inconsistent with the group, and then changing the behavior to follow the noticed pattern. If self-correction doesn't happen, people may joke about it to the norm violator to draw attention to it. And then they may make fun of the person directly. If the behavior continues, that could lead to arguments and then exclusion. Given the words applied to the part of this process, sanctions, positive reinforcement, and self-correction, this might sound rather formal or serious to you. So let's take a look at an example and how this looks in a scenario. Let's say a group member in your department is missing deadlines. The first time someone misses a deadline, usually there's a bit of a pass given, and the leader and group will wait to see if this is a one-time thing, and the individual self-corrects. You're giving someone the benefit of the doubt. The second time, someone might make a joke, saying something like, I used to miss deadlines in college, but outgrew that when I got a real job, letting the individual know that their lapse has been noticed. If the third sanction is necessary, it might escalate with a little bit more pointed humor, making fun of the individual. Too many late nights out to make your deadline, huh? By the fourth time, the gloves begin to come off, and it escalates to an argument. You missing the deadlines makes the team look bad to our boss and throws off my work schedule. If the bad behavior continues, it will probably move to exclusion. Group members will limit communication with the person, they won't have lunch with them, they'll stop offering suggestions to help them, and the leader might assign work to others. As a leader, you may let the group sanction others a little bit, but you want to step in before it escalates too far and take the person aside to discuss their behavior. Once it gets to the exclusion point, it's hard to come back from that. Think of that person who finally turns their part in for a written document after ghosting for a long time. How happy are you to welcome that person back into the group when you have to do a presentation based on the written document? Are you going to want them to do a critical part? Are you going to give them a good evaluation in the end? The pressure to conform to norms isn't the same across norms or individuals. Some norms have a wider range of what is acceptable. We can see that with the two types of norms, and people respond to norms differently. Status also impacts expectations of following norms. For norms explicitly tied to values of an organization, high-status people are expected to follow them closely. So, a leader of an environmentally conscious organization would be expected to recycle and model that behavior for everyone. But a high-powered person may also be allowed to not follow some norms that are expected of others, like a leader arriving late to a meeting because that leader has a super packed schedule, or overall contributes a huge amount to the group. This kind of pass might not be acceptable in someone of lower status, but it is acceptable in a higher status individual. You probably noticed this when we were doing the in-class activity where we talked about traits of individuals who were famous. Do you remember that part? It was interesting to see how some things were acceptable from high status individuals, but you wouldn't hire someone with those traits. Modeling behaviors is the final way a leader can influence norms. So if you want everyone to arrive 5 minutes early for meetings, you can help create that norm by doing so yourself. This signals to your followers that this is your expectation. The third factor in establishing a constructive climate is building cohesiveness. Cohesiveness is described as a sense of we-ness, or bonding with the group. Members identify with the group and its goals and find satisfaction in being an accepted member of the group. So you may have felt this as a member of a student organization, a branch of the military, or work team. Frequently, we feel the same sense of we-ness towards our college or university post-graduation. Cohesion has a lot of positive outcomes. It's associated with increased participation and better interaction among members. Membership tends to be more consistent, and members are more willing to attend group meetings when a group is cohesive. Additionally, cohesive members develop positive feelings towards one another and are able to strongly influence each other. Think about those sanctions. Their power lies in the individual caring about being excluded from the group. Member satisfaction is high in cohesive groups, and members usually are more productive than members of a less cohesive group. Leaders can build cohesiveness by helping groups to create a climate of trust. Trust is essential to organizational success. Research shows that organizations with trusting climates tend to be more productive, creative, profitable, competitive, and effective. People in trusting climates are happier and feel committed to the group and are willing to go beyond their job description to help coworkers. If a leader creates a trusting climate, that can boost performance by 1. Fostering teamwork, cooperation, and risk-taking. 2. Increasing the flow and quality of information. And 3. Improving problem solving. Leaders create this kind of climate by communicating high expectations of competence, openness and honesty, concern for others, reliability, that means acting consistently with actions that align with their words, and identification, that means followers connect with the organization's goals, values, and culture. Leaders can build cohesiveness by inviting group members to become active participants and encouraging passive or withdrawn members to become involved. This encourages buy-in and the feeling of being part of the group. Leaders should be willing to listen to and accept group members for who they are. This goes back to what we talked about in Chapter 6 with strengths. Everyone in the group has different strengths, and by accepting individuals as individuals rather than by valuing uniformity, you will have a stronger and more cohesive group. Building on that, if you help them achieve individual goals, they will feel more supported. Leaders should build a climate where people feel safe expressing divergent viewpoints, which we'll talk about more with groupthink. Finally, allow group members to share the leadership responsibilities and foster member-to-member interaction instead of only leader-to-follower interaction. If you take a look at these, many actions sound a lot like what a non-Theory X, non-authoritarian leadership philosophy style leader would do, because, although it was not necessarily worded that way when we discussed it, these kinds of leaders tend to value group cohesiveness. Cohesiveness sounds great. What could go wrong? Groupthink. Is it possible for a group to get too cohesive? When group members become extremely close, they can develop a closed mindset called groupthink, which values unanimity over critical appraisal of alternate ideas or viewpoints. You've probably heard about this concept in other classes. If not, you will. Hearing about it multiple times, it means it's probably important, right? Also, this is a good time to be taking notes. Not all of this is in the textbook. Hint, hint. There are 8 symptoms or signs of groupthink. I'm going to divide them into 3 main categories. Signs of overconfidence. These are the illusion of invulnerability, when most or all group members are overly optimistic and take huge risks, and the belief in the inherent morality of the group. When members ignore the ethical consequences of their actions and choices because they believe that their group is inherently ethical and would not do something wrong. The next 2 are that's the illusion of invulnerability and the belief in the inherent morality of the group. Signs of closed-mindedness, which includes collective rationalization. Members rationalize or downplay information or warnings that challenge their decisions or assumptions. This is maladaptive sense-making. They're ignoring information that contradicts their mental model. And stereotypes of outside groups, where members view out-group members as evil or stupid and also underestimate others' capabilities. The last 4 fall under signs of group pressure. Pressure on dissenters, in which some members coerce dissenting members to go with the main opinion of the group. Self-censorship, when doubting individuals don't speak up about doubts or counterarguments. The illusion of unanimity, when members think that the lack of voiced conflicting opinions means everyone agrees with the decision. This is tied to pressure and self-censorship. And self-appointed mind guards. Members protect the leader from dissenting opinions that could counter the consensus of the group. So, how do leaders prevent groupthink? Many factors contribute to groupthink, like group isolation, time pressures, homogeneous members, and other things, but leadership itself can be a big factor. For example, leaders pushing for a specific solution might cut off discussion and limit the number of alternatives considered. Leaders can also have a big role in preventing groupthink by not expressing preference for a certain choice or solution, urging members to deliberate and consider a variety of alternatives, telling group members to critically evaluate choices, even to the point of specifically assigning one member to be the devil's advocate and to question or argue about decisions, inviting experts to weigh in, breaking the group up to work in subgroups and come back to negotiate differences, and creating an opportunity for anonymous feedback and voting. There are more, but this is a good starting place. The overarching idea is to find ways to allow dissenting or different thoughts or opinions to have a place, and deliberately taking on viewpoints outside of the group to get a different perspective. We know cohesiveness, but not too much is a good thing in groups. So how do you build cohesiveness virtually? In video 8.2, Northouse talks about how if we had to pick one factor of the 4 factors in establishing a constructive climate for his class, it would be cohesiveness. It keeps people together and supportive of each other. When group members are cohesive, they are more productive. While building cohesiveness takes a certain amount of skill in a leader, you've just heard a lot of ways to do that, but most of them rely on you and your followers being in person. How do you do this virtually? For those of you who are working, how do you do it in the workplace? What are you seeing there? What can you do as a group member in these areas to build cohesiveness in your upcoming group projects for this class or others? Take a minute to consider this. Finally, we come to the last factor, promoting standards of excellence. The book mentions Larson and LaFasto's 1989 study of 75 highly successful teams. They spent almost 3 years conducting this study and interviewed key members of teams in diverse areas and turned it into a book. Their work was groundbreaking, and they identified 8 strategies that they believe are essential to team performance. Standards of excellence is one of those strategies. A quick review of what standards of excellence are. These standards are the expressed and implied expectations for performance that exist within a group or an organization. A simple standard of excellence that you're all familiar with is your grades and grade point average. Jackson and Hackman also found that successful teams have high expectations regarding outcomes. These standards of excellence define acceptable performance. 6 factors that are essential for members to function effectively. What group members need to know and what skills they need to acquire. How much initiative and effort they need to demonstrate. How group members are expected to treat one another, the extent to which deadlines are significant, the goals they need to achieve, and what the consequences are if they achieve or fail to achieve these goals. Standards should be clearly articulated. Leaders and team members should hold everyone to those standards. To influence performance, the authors contend that a leader must stress the 3 R's. 1. Require results. 2. Review results. And 3. Reward results. Require results. A leader needs to articulate clear, concrete expectations for team members. Expectations are important because they reduce uncertainty. When people know what's expected, they're able to work on the task and not worry about if they're doing it the way the leader wants them to. Working together, a leader and team members should establish mutual goals and identify specific objectives for achieving the results associated with those goals. Giving clear objectives and instructions is the first step to high-quality performance. Review results. Feedback is also a key part of influencing performance. Constructive feedback allows group members to look at themselves honestly and know what they need to maintain or improve. It can also resolve performance issues because providing feedback can allow you to confront and resolve inadequate performance by team members. Some of you have already asked if there will be team evaluations for your group project during the project in addition to at the end of the project. So clearly you've already discovered how providing feedback can help correct subpar performance by group members. When giving feedback, leaders should be aware of the power difference between themselves and their employee, as well as potential bias. Think about being called into the boss's office. There's a power differential, right? The boss is higher in the hierarchy than you and has more power. Therefore, their words or evaluation often carry more power. So be careful in how you give feedback. There are ways to give constructive feedback. Address behaviors, not the individual. Focus the feedback on their action, not them as people. Describe specifically what you've observed rather than interpreting the behavior. Tell them what you've seen, not what you think of what you've seen. Provide facts rather than judgment. Use I language. You did this or that can make people feel personally attacked, and defensive people don't listen well. Give the feedback in calm, unemotional language. This encourages the person receiving the feedback to remain calm as well. And check in to ensure clear communication has occurred with specific questions, not, did you get all that? Make sure they understand what you meant and don't go away with the wrong impression. This could lead to more feedback and frustration. Rewarding results is a very practical, straightforward process, something that every leader can do. You can do this through recognizing and appreciating the contributions of group members and expressing appreciation for individual excellence. When a leader recognizes group members and gives encouragement, members feel valued, and there is a greater sense of a group identity and community spirit. Are you confronting inadequate performance by group members? What skills do you need to develop to do this more effectively? Well, I can guarantee you'll be asked this question in a job interview in some form. So, we've all been in a group with a deadweight member or members. We all anticipate that this happens to everyone. Sometimes you're the deadweight, sometimes you're not. This deadweight person is someone who doesn't have their part done on time, or they don't show up to meetings, or they don't respond to texts. They're no fun. Start thinking now about your strategies for confronting this behavior and how you can improve your teams now and later when you're the team leader. Back to the study guide questions. So hopefully at this point you can answer all these questions. You know the 8 signs of groupthink. You're able to give good feedback. Can you see how important this is in an organization? So whether you're leading a small team, you're a member of a small team, or you're moving up in the organization and you're leading larger teams, maybe you have a startup and you're trying to motivate that small team to go after your vision. All of this is really important to achieving your goals as you create a constructive climate where people can work towards those goals and get along with each other, respect each other, and follow norms that you've established that make the group a more pleasant place to be. I hope this helped. Bye.